Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I would hope that we would spend a lot more time talking about Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 in the days ahead. Let me just do a quick follow-up question on that. Secretary Yellen, the Pillar 1, Pillar 2 agreements, are these planned to be an executive agreement only, or is it planned to be able to come through this committee? Anything on the tax policy issues for the Finance Committee, congressionally required, constitutionally required, to be able to have a tax issue for an American entity to actually come through Congress, or do you plan for this to be executive only?
I mean, I believe a Pillar 1 agreement would involve congressional action. It's not something that could be just signed into law and effective with an executive order.
Pillar 1 or 2, or either of them?
Excuse me?
Either Pillar 1 or 2, either one?
Pillar 2 also needs to be adopted by Congress.
Right, thank you.
Propose that.
You talked about just American business having uncertainty. That this is an issue right now, obviously, that people don't know what the tax policy is and don't know if it's going to even come through this committee. And it's good to be able to hear what the plan is. Whatever agreement, whatever its requirement is done, is your intention actually.
We will bring it to Congress, and we have tried to keep this committee informed on a bipartisan basis.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The IDCs, I noticed in the budget, the intangible drilling costs for oil and gas production. I thought it was interesting in the president's budget and the proposal, every other business in America that does manufacturing can deduct their normal business expenses. But in the president's proposal, it is except oil and gas production. They cannot and should not be able to deduct normal business expenses. Is there a reason why those particular manufacturing locations should not be able to deduct normal business expenses and every other manufacturer in the country should?
Well, in general, subsidies to fossil fuels are something that the president looks to phase out.
This is not a subsidy. Intangible drilling cost is not subsidy. That's the cost of actual production. That's the cost of all the equipment, of everything else around it. That's not a subsidy. Every manufacturing business can write off their normal business expenses. I guess my question is, why do those manufacturers not get to write off their business expenses and everyone else does?
It's because the fossil fuel industries have benefited from many subsidies over many years that makes it difficult for clean energy to be taken up.
Well, I noticed recently that Treasury and the State Department have reduced the sanctions on Venezuela, and that we're now buying oil from Venezuela when we weren't for the last 4 years. So I guess my question is, the president's proposal is to make it harder to produce American energy, but there's still an acknowledgement that we need oil still. And so now we're buying oil from Venezuela when previously we weren't. If you go back 2 years ago, even the first 2 years of the Biden administration, we're not buying any oil from Venezuela, knowing that it's the Maduro regime and all that they're doing to their people. But there's a proposal to increase taxes on American companies, but buy more for Venezuela. Why would that be?
The relief that was put into place reflected progress that seemed to be made in Venezuela in respect to our foreign policy goals.
Would that be the same with Iran? Because I know for some of the Iranian sanctions, there was 20. New York Times reported 27 tankers were then insured by an American company. They were able to bring in put Iranian oil on the world market when we had pretty strict sanctions on Iran.
We have very strict sanctions on Iran, and I'm not aware of anything that we do that is permissive in terms of Iranian oil exports.
I'll have my team share this New York Times article with you that detailed out how Iran is avoiding American sanctions, and it's not as tight as it was, and that there are even American companies providing insurance for Iranian tankers moving oil now in a way that wasn't in the past.
Well, I'd be happy to look at it, but we are very focused on trying to impose the strictest possible regime
as
on
well
Iran.
We should. The Iranian proxies have attacked American forces 200 times and have taken the lives of Americans even in the last few months. One last question just on one of the 30D clean vehicle credits that is out there. I know the president's been very focused on the Made in America requirements. He talked about that during the State of the Union speech. we had testimony sitting at that same table just a few days ago of an American company that is producing a product or was attempting to produce a product, but China got a waiver from Treasury for a product that was coming in, and so the American company dropped it and said, we're not going to do it anymore because Treasury gave a waiver to the Chinese product to be able to go in and get this 30D clean vehicle credit. It seems to be a gap still that Treasury is giving waivers to some Chinese companies that literally undercut an American company in production. It's one that I'm not going to try to have you walk through because you couldn't have known that, but literally sitting at that table just a few days ago was an American company saying, I'm having to struggle with the Treasury right now because they're giving waivers to Chinese companies.
I'm not aware of any waiver that we have given. Their 30D has foreign entity of concern restrictions. They're coming into play this year and next, and they essentially make it impossible for any electric vehicle to qualify for the 30D credit if they contain minerals that are extracted or processed in China or battery components that are produced there. And that's a very stringent requirement that's coming
we'll
into
have staff
play.
follow up.
The time of the gentleman's expired.